A very good morning to you all, and thank you for joining me at RegTech London today. My name's Ian Phillips, and I'm honoured to be able to be speaking to you today. In this presentation, we're going to explore a little bit on the operational resilience, understand the breadth of controls that are required to meet the regulation, and give you some insights into some of the solution offerings out there. I hope you find this insightful, and it hopefully inspires you to take action within your own company. So a little bit about HCLSoftware. For the guys on the slides, please just look out. I think the slides are turning by themselves. I'm not pushing anything. So a little bit about HCLSoftware. For many of you that have not heard about HCLSoftware, we are among the top 25 software companies by revenue worldwide. HCLSoftware is a division of the HCL Tech, larger HCL Tech company. We have a very wide range of products, from financial management to human resources, and everything in between. We like to build solutions where our clients have got gaps, and today we'll focus a little bit about this to meet the operational resiliency regulation. I'd like to point out I'm very proud we've partnered with Ferrari recently, so keep your eye out for the HCLSoftware logo on the Ferrari F1 cars as they go past. Yeah, it's definitely moving by itself, guys. If you come to our booth, there's actually Ferrari T-shirts over there for in a prize draw, so do come to the booth. And I'm also can say we do take clients to the races quite often, so definitely come to the booth. So a little bit about our commitment to AI and automation. So look, we have a massive practice around AI and automation. We believe that you have to be able to drive innovation now within companies through AI and automation, and it's the only way to stay ahead of the competition. Our AI and automation is our really our foray now at the moment into business observability, and as I said, we've got a very large practice around this now. Now it's not clicking. There we go. Sorry, guys. Only one slide is moving now. Only the one side's moving. Yeah, it's not coming up. So only the one screen's working. All right, let me get on there, guys. So a little bit about observability and operational resilience. Would never be a conference if we didn't talk a little bit about what the analysts think of the subject. We've been focused on business observability for the last couple of years now, and really focused about how we drive those efficiencies within our customer base. Operational resilience has popped up as well now, and if you look at the two, you can't do one without the other, or you definitely can't do operational resiliency without having a fully comprehensive observability strategy in place there. Looking at the Gartner notes there, just on the left-hand side, I think from your side, it's all about focusing on the impact to the client. And you need to be really looking at the execution of controls that impact your workforce, your processes, and the facilities of the technology. Now, that is a very wide scope. And if you think about regulation, how the market views you as your company, you've got to really be able to think about how you are meeting that regulation, because that's how the customer is going to perceive you. Operational risk really covers financial resiliency, technology resiliency, transactional resiliency. And that means everything from market volatility to system outages to errors within your systems to simply manual processes going wrong. We really have to be able to think about this in the whole terms across your organization for you to be able to really understand, are you resilient in the operations space? So I think at this point I'm going to hand over to Garreth. We're going to hear a little bit about how Garreth is tackling operational resiliency within DNA payments, and then I'll come back on afterwards and we'll talk a little bit about the solutioning and how that actually all fits together.
Cheers, Ian. Thank you very much. Just a tiny bit about DNA payments. We're a late stage startup. We have got 75,000 terminals in the UK market. If you've been to a Timpson's, you've been to a Robert Dyce, you've used a DNA payments terminal, but you've probably never heard of us because we've only been in existence 3 years. Most of our growth is through M&A. So just, yeah, I suppose there's a, oh, I've got that one, sorry. Yeah, that's right. So just in terms of DNA and how it's come together, as I've just said, we've got about 75,000 terminals. And the interesting thing in payments is everybody thinks you go to a POS machine, you tap your card, takes out of your money within maybe 2 seconds, the customer gets paid, that's it. The network is extremely complex and getting more complex because of open banking, because of regulation, because of increased comms. And it's just becoming one of those areas where 10, 15 years ago, there were 5 or 6 major players. There may have been 10, 15 fintechs involved, and now I think the last count is about 1,700 fintechs just in the UK involved in payments in some shape or form. So it's becoming much more complex. And the ability to monitor is so mixed both internally and externally with everything we've got. So at DNA, for example, we have 3 different tech stacks, moving around, 3 different tech stacks, and then we rely on something like 25 different suppliers, some of which are in our control, some of which not in our control, MasterCard, Visa, not to mention the tens of thousands of card issuers around the world who could have their own outages and issues. So it's really important when it comes to operational resiliency, where you look at that, and the interesting question on consumer duty was interesting a couple of minutes ago, because that is tough. But if you talk about operational resilience specifically, and what we think and what our interpretation of it is really about thinking about the customer and making sure we understand that they need the ability to take payments 24/7, 365. We need to make sure if there is an outage, and there always is, because again, as I just mentioned, there's lots of external suppliers that we can't control. We recently had a Vodafone issue in Manchester. We had about 2,500 customers in Manchester who couldn't use their terminals because their Vodafone was down, and no matter how much you tell the customer that the terminal can also use their broadband, it's amazing how many customers don't have broadband in their shops. So that was it. They couldn't use their terminals, completely out of our control. So we have to be able to instantly know that it was just Manchester. It wasn't a SIM outage across the whole of UK. We had to work out which customers it was affecting. Some of them may be restaurants or bars that only open at night. They wouldn't have been affected. We have to be able to communicate to them as quickly as possible, and we have to be able to give them an ETA. And anybody who remembers who was affected or remembers the TSB outage from a few years ago, I'm a TSB customer, I was. The most frustrating thing was no ETA. No idea when I could use my bank account again. That's the most frustrating thing. So the resilience element from our perspective is to think customer, because there's probably less than 10% of you in here have cash in your wallet right now. You rely on your phone, you rely on a card. If you can't pay, you walk out the shop, you don't buy the goods. So it's super, super important. But we think about it from a customer perspective and not just from a regulatory perspective. Oh, we've got to tick this box. We've got to do our testing. We've got to have DR. We've got to make sure we test, we plan, we document, we do it again and again and again. That's all great, but ultimately that doesn't necessarily give you what the customer wants. So we're doing it very much from a think customer mindset. So I don't need to go through any of that. I think you all know. So as I mentioned earlier, and go back to the one prior to that one. The one with the circles on, if you can find it. So just again, one before. I've never been able to control something just in my mind before. It's amazing. Other than my dog. So just a quick circle for those who don't know. This is a very, 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 very simple explanation of the transactional side of payments. A very, very simple in card payments. Okay, consumer goes to the merchant, it talks to a gateway, talks to an acquirer, talks to MasterCard, Visa, talks to the consumer or the issuing bank in this case. And if you look at it from the left-hand side, that bit on the left is really what's in the merchant's environment. There's a terminal, there's a SIM card, they may have broadband, they may have comms issues. Our number one call into our call center is, I can't connect the terminal. It could be anything. Could be the hardware, could be the software, could be the SIM provider. We have to be able to analyze that. Single merchant environment issues are fine, but as I mentioned earlier, that example of Manchester where Vodafone went down, we need to be able to see that and see it quickly. On the other side, there's all of the infrastructure that we have ourselves, again, some of which we partner with, some of which is our own responsibility, data centers or cloud computing or whatever else you might have set up these days. We're relying on banks who fund our customers. We're not, we don't do the funding ourselves like a Barclaycard would or a JP Morgan would, as an example. We actually rely on other banks, which are generally other fintechs, Banking Circle, ClearBank, etc. So you're constantly reliant on all of these external sources as well as your internal things that you have to be able to monitor and quickly understand and go forward. So the mindset we've taken and where we go forward, if you go to the next slide, please, is really about just controlling what we can control. The aeroplane view, if you've got it. So I think about myself constantly as I'm the pilot of a plane, and every morning I go and do my checks, and I make sure everything's working. But as I'm flying, I might need to go, see the stewardess to make sure my dinner's all good. But I want to make sure all the dials are doing what they're meant to do. But what I can't control is the weather. I can't control another plane. I can't control potentially what's happening on the ground below me, whether I need to land at that particular landing strip, or I need to move to another one because it may be disruption or whatever it might be. So constantly having my hands and my eyes capable of looking at screens and looking at things at real time can tell me where things are good or not good is really what I need constantly. And really that's what we have used the iControl software for within the platform, is because in tech world everybody goes, oh, we've got Splunk reports, we've got alerts, great, fantastic. That doesn't tell me whether my bank has actually sent my bank to my merchant funding. It doesn't tell me whether my SIM card's working in all my terminals. It doesn't tell me whether MasterCard have got a problem or Visa have got a problem. It might do, but it might tell me a bit later. It doesn't tell me where I can go look at that problem. So I need to be able to see all of those things quickly and see them. And so I take a controllable view, and that's how we're adopting our operational resiliency framework, is really around thinking customer and controlling the controllable.
Cool. Thank you, Garreth. And I think Gareth's viewpoint is pertinent to today's discussions about how you have to be able to be thinking a lot larger across your organization from risk and how you're going to mitigate that risk and how you're going to be able to test and ensure that you can actually deliver to your customer. So we're going to try a little bit more now. There's a lot of clicking in the next couple of sections because I'm going to try and talk you through a little bit of how the solution works. So last year's event, I was up on stage and I talked all about our Enterprise Control Center. We specifically built the Enterprise Control Center because nothing existed in the market at the time to be able to pull together all of the key critical business processes and services so that you can be able to see them end to end. And we've been working a lot with Garreth on that. Good, still on there. I also spoke about last year about how we then integrated our digital twin technology so that where the human element is within the business, you could scale that human element using digital twins. This year, I'm going to talk a little bit more now about how we actually joining the regulatory compliance piece for operational resilience all the way through into the enterprise command center. If you're interested in the digital twin, please visit the booth. The guys will be happily talk you through a little bit about that. But as I said today, I'm going to just focus on the regulatory compliance piece so that you can actually get that end-to-end view across your organization. So firstly, let me introduce Surety. Surety is our newest partner within our regulatory and control and metric solution. Surety has quite an intuitive AI platform that they've built that is able to bring in the different directives, regulations, legislations or policies. They then are able to bring those documents in as digital versions, segment those documents into text, image, and tables, map a set of controls around that, and with the evidence requirements. That gives you an end-to-end life cycle of your compliance process. Now, combining that with the Enterprise Control Center, and we've got something that's actually quite powerful, because now we can actually bring those controls across from Surety into the Enterprise Control Center, and we can link those controls within each of the different business services that are actually delivering those key areas with your for your clients. And as I've just brought up there, you actually want to be able to digitize those business services so that you can actually understand each of the different controls along the lines. And if I just refresh your guys' memory, Garreth had it up on a slide there earlier. The key things around operational resilience is you need to be able to understand which business services are delivering what to what clients. You need to be able to understand the chain of events of those business services. You need to be able to measure those business services, what we call tolerance levels along the lines there. Everywhere it could impact a client deliverable, and you need to be able to continually monitor those as well. So you need to be continually checking that it's actually working. And any change within your organization sparks off a compliance piece that has to be re-looked at again within those services. And we all know that there's outages happen all the time, as Garreth has actually alluded to there as well. It happens all the time within our organization. So this is a continual process. It is going to have to take place. Can I get to the next one? One more? Nothing's moving. Oh, right. So I'm going to try and explain this, how we're going to do this. So we've put the solution together, and I see it's jumping all over the place. So I'm going to move on to one of the screens here. So step one, as I mentioned, we're going to digitize the regulation, the policy, the directive, the legislation, and we're going to segment that into text, image, and tables. We're going to map those into controls with evidence. Now, to make this easier as well, and something that came up on the forum here, is we're looking to be able to create domain packs around this so that we can do this once and we can walk into multiple customers and we can actually say, well, actually, there's the directive, there's the legislation, these are all the controls that we've already got. Is there any more you want to add to speed up the whole process? We then want to be able to send those control descriptions over into our Enterprise Control Center and underpin those within the business service for the operational controls. And I'll talk a little bit about the operational controls because it does get quite detailed. Data can get streamed from any of the different systems that you've got there. We talked a little bit about the data problem as well. We've made this completely open-ended. We reuse all the investment in technology that's already existing in organizations, and we stream the data into the Enterprise Control Center to be able to go through the rules engine and determine if there's a breach or not breach. That calculation then gets passed back into the surety module, where your compliance officer can take the evidence, and the evidence score is calculated, and then can do the reporting back to the regulator. So let's just talk, if I can move on. There we go. Let's just talk about this in just a low-level area as well within each of the different services. As I talked about a service, so we take a service and we break that into the different parts of the service. I like to be able to say the question you're going to ask at each point of those services is, what does good look like in your organization? Because that's what you really are interested in. You want to know that it's working. So when you wake up in the morning and you worry about something, you want to know what good looks like. That's the control, the operational control that your operation teams are going to be interested in. We're able to monitor that in real time and look at the tolerances. And if something does go wrong, the question really needs to be asked is, what's gone wrong, who's affected, and how much? So you want to be able to get to the detail, and you want to be able to get to the detail in the system that is actually holding that information. Again, you don't want to bring that all into a centralized system. Sorry, guys, we've got a real challenge with this. So if I can get one more back, forward. This is just not going anyway. Can you move them forward? Okay. So let's just look at some of these operational controls that you're going to be able to need in order to be compliant with the regulation. So if you think about it just from a level of on the ground, everywhere where it impacts a client, where you potentially can impact a client within one of your key critical business services. And if you take a bank, payments is a key critical business service within the banks. From receiving the instruction to checking the content to making sure your regulatory filters are working, and you will have a plethora of different tools out there that are actually looking at the different regulatory filtering sections. You need to be able to enhance or pull out the key controls that are actually affected there, all the way to clearing and booking that payment. Those are all the low-level operational controls. And if you think about it, your poor compliance officer needs to be able to have insights into what's actually happening at each of the different business services to actually be able to tick the box and say, hey, we're compliant here. We understand the business service. We understand the key chain of events within that business service. And we're measuring and monitoring each of those different tolerances along the lines. And if we go into the last one, and in the end, this is what you really want to be able to achieve from a compliance reporting perspective. You want to be able to see your overall compliance score. With a combination of within surety and within the enterprise control center, how well you're actually doing in real time would be nice. You want to be able to see that by your business service health, to be able to see how each of your business services are performing. You want to be able to get down from a regional or a country to be able to see where that's actually been affected. And if not, you want to just break it down by the different controls. So if you think of operational resiliency, it could be financial resilience, it could be transaction resilience, it could just be in your tech where the problem actually exists. You want to be able to see those. Just by tagging the different controls that you've got in the Enterprise Control Center, you can aggregate these using custom dimensions. Now, I know I've talked a lot about operational resiliency, but actually it works for all the different regulations out there. So we've looked at the BCBS 239, we've looked at the environment, social, government area, ESG, we've looked at cybersecurity, we've looked at just if you take a simple policy like diversity and inclusion. It covers the breadth of the spectrum. So we are looking at a solution that's open-ended for all the different regulations that are out there.